Hello, welcome back to Proverbs, a letter to my son. Today we'll be looking at lesson 3 in the series, Proverbs, a letter to my son. And we'll be using the New American Standard Translation for this study. Lesson 2 and lesson 3 are dealing with Proverbs 1:7. The first half of Proverbs 1:7 says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And we looked at that in lesson 2, where we learned what the fear of the Lord is, who the Lord is, and what knowledge is. And then the second half of the verse, fools despise wisdom and destruction, this is lesson 3. But now, there are 3 word studies. In that half of the verse, it says fools despise wisdom and instruction. So we need to look at what a fool is. And that will be when we look at lesson 3, parts 1 and 2. And part 1 will discuss fools number 1 and 2. There are 3 of them. And part 2 will discuss fool number 3 and the summary of the fool. Then in lesson 3, part 3, we'll discuss wisdom and instruction. So, what is a fool? Can you tell me? Before I started this study, I didn't know. I probably talked to several, but I didn't know. Let me show you several things about a fool, and every fool will do one or more of the following. Notice, number 1, he'll do and say things that are hurtful, costly, or downright disastrous. They'll do that. 2, he will argue with anyone who disagrees with him. Quick to argue. Even if he's not part of the argument, he'll jump in there. Number 3, he'll do what he wants, even if it causes his premature death. Now remember, not every fool does all of these, but every fool will do one or more. 4, he'll make decisions based upon emotions rather than logic. So he doesn't get a sound judgment, and he makes bad decisions. Number 5, he will reject counsel. He feels that there's nothing wrong with what he does or says. And number 6, he lives for self and leaves God out of his life. Now, understand, I must point out that a fool is someone who does these on a regular basis. Someone who makes one wrong choice or engages in some stupid or hurtful activity one time is foolish. He's not a fool in the sense of this study. So these are things that a fool will do, and they'll do one or more of those. I'd like to give you a picture of how the fool stands in the realm of manners of living. Look at the chart. Everything above the red line is desirable. Everything below the red line is undesirable. So let's start with a prudent man. He's desirable. Why? Because he always evaluates the circumstances, and if the results will be good and beneficial, he'll proceed. If they'll be hurtful or costly, he'll abstain. What about the naive man? He's just the opposite. He doesn't consider the consequences at all, and he'll make choices that are disastrous, that are hurtful, and he doesn't know any better. It's not that he knows he's right, he just doesn't know any better. Now, the wise man is more valuable than the prudent man, because the wise man makes wise decisions and makes the best decisions using prudence. But now the fool, he's despicable. He thinks he's always right. He's just the opposite of the wise man. I know what I'm doing, and no one's going to tell me different. I'm going to do what I want to do, and nobody's going to stop me. So the fool is the most undesirable one of the bunch. And I hope you're not doing some of the things that a fool does. Now in Proverbs, there are 3 Hebrew words for fool. We're going to look at all 3, and then there's a 4th that is not fool, but foolishness. So when we look at the 3 types of fools, number 1 is the Strong's 03684 fool, mentioned 49 times. And a summary of Strong's definition is one who only wants to have fun and is gullible and is prone to make wrong choices. That's his nature. The second one is the 0191 fool, mentioned 19 times in Proverbs, one who is morally corrupt and doesn't have the sense to know better. And the third one is the 05036 fool, mentioned only 3 times in Proverbs, and it's one who is mean, selfish, and closed to reason. Let's dive in there now and see what we can learn about these fools. The first one is Strong's 03684 fool, and Strong's defines that as a fool, stupid fellow, dullard, simpleton, arrogant one. And Theological Word Book of the Old Testament defines him as the dull or obstinate one, referring not to mental deficiency, but to a propensity to make wrong choices. This is the fool. Now, there are 2 aspects of that. Let's give general definitions. We're going to kind of summarize. He wants to have fun and experience physical pleasures. That's all he wants. That's the one side of him. And the other side of him is he's gullible and makes decisions based upon emotions rather than sound logic. So let's look at that first one, the 03684 fool. He wants to have fun and or experience physical pleasures. I'm going to go to Ecclesiastes first. Let's read a couple verses. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, because that is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. When we go to a funeral, we realize life is short, and one day we'll be there too. And then in verse 4, the mind of the wise is in the house of mourning. He takes life seriously, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. That's all he wants. He's not looking toward the future. He's not taking into account what's going to result from what he does. He doesn't consider what's going to happen later on because of his choices. And what's the essence? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. So that's the fool's approach to life. One more verse. It's better to listen to rebuke of a wise man than for one to listen to the songs of fools. For as the crackling of thorn bushes under the pot, so is the laughter of the fool. So he doesn't take life serious. He's looking for whatever he can have fun with today, what physical pleasures he can experience today, and that's all he really cares about. That's his goal in life. Now let's look at an example of this. Here's a man in Luke chapter 12. He's the rich man. He has a bumper crop, and he's going to build bigger barns and store it. And looking in verse 19, he says, I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said, you fool, this very night your soul shall be required of you. Now, who will own what you have? So is the man who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. This man only wanted to experience pleasure and enjoyment and sit back and all for himself. And it's all for himself. So this is the fool. Let's look at some characteristics of this particular fool. First, he spends money on today and doesn't save for the future. There is precious treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it up. A wise man will save and spend wisely. And in the future, there's funds for retirement. There are funds to meet emergency needs. But the fool spends everything right now, and he doesn't save it. All that's important to him is today. And then in Psalm 49, we read, for he, that is God, sees even wise men die. The stupid and the senseless alike perish and leave their wealth to others. Their inner thought is that their houses are forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They've called their lands after their own name. But man in his pomp will not endure. He is like the beasts that perish. This is the way of those who are foolish, and those after them who approve of their words. The man whose goal in life is to be rich is a fool. Now, there's nothing wrong with riches if the rich man realizes that it's God's money and he gives and spends for God's glory. But just acquiring it for myself, for what I can get out of it. I've seen families ruined. A guy lost his business, lost his wife, lost his kids, lost everything. I used to teach a Bible class down at the rescue mission in Los Angeles, and I rubbed shoulders with doctors, lawyers, professional people who'd lost everything. And it's just tragic. It really is. What else do we know about him? Well, he's always looking for greener pastures. Wisdom is in the presence of the one who has understanding, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. He's always looking for something better. A good example of that is the lottery. People give their money away, and I say give because they don't get anything back, most of them. They give their money away to buy tickets, and many of them can't afford it. So they get out there and they're hoping to make it big, looking for greener pastures. And I say this, he who does not plan for the future will fail in the future. These same ones that are spending their money on the lottery, hoping to make it rich, aren't going to have the money they need in retirement days. It's just the way it is. So let's look at the other aspect of the 03684 fool. He's gullible and makes decisions based upon emotions rather than sound logic. Let's look at some characteristics of him. He has a distorted outlook on life. Remember in the list that we said before, one of those statements is that he moves on emotions rather than logic. Look at the verse here. The wisdom of the sensible is to understand his way, but the foolishness of fools is deceit. Notice foolishness is Strong's 0200. We're going to look at that later. That's not the fool, it's the results. It seems to be the results of a fool's choices and actions. But what he thinks is good is not good. Ecclesiastes 2:14 says, the wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. He makes decisions based on emotions, but he doesn't stop to logic them out. So he makes bad decisions. A fool looks at life as he wishes it were, instead of what it actually is. Many of the leaders in our country today in America are doing the same thing. They look at our country as though they wish it was, and not as it actually is. Then, Ecclesiastes chapter 10, a wise man's heart directs him to the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. Even when the fool walks along the road, his sense is lacking, and he demonstrates to everyone that he is a fool. Notice it says, a wise man turns him to the right. I find it interesting when a person trusts Christ and is born again, and he was previously a liberal, most of the time they become a staunch conservative because they start thinking with their mind instead of their heart. What else do we know now? He disrespects his parents. Look at chapter 10, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is grief to his mother. And then Proverbs 17:21. He who sires a fool does so to his sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. When we look at chapter 30 of Proverbs, we see Augur rebuking his two sons. And one of the things in there, the whole section of it, is where the boys disrespect their father. And it says in chapter 30, verse 11, there's a kind of man who curses his father and does not bless his mother. He's letting the boys know the heart attitude that's driving this disrespectful parental authority. And then at the end of the chapter, he says in verse 17, the eye that mocks a father and scorns a mother, the ravens of the valley will pluck it out, and the young eagles will eat it. So what's he saying there? If you keep disrespecting your parents, you're going to come to a quick end, and it's going to be a disastrous end. Don't go there. Recognize your error and get it right. So what else do we know? He gets angry easily. A fool always loses his temper, but a wise man holds it back. Now here's a different type of fool we'll look at in a minute. In verse 16, a fool's anger is known at once, but a prudent man conceals dishonor. Both these fools have an issue with anger. In chapter 29, verse 9, when a wise man has a controversy with a foolish man, the foolish man either rages or laughs, and there is no rest. Notice, do not be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. Don't go there. And then I say, as a result of that, or therefore, do not associate with a man given to anger, or go with a hot-tempered man, or you will learn his ways and find a snare for yourself. We tend to become like the people we associate with, especially the close friends. So be careful to choose good and godly friends, and let the fool go his way, but don't be part of his lifestyle. What else do we know? He takes great pleasure in committing wickedness. Proverbs 10:23 says, "Doing wickedness is like sport to a fool, and so is wisdom to a man of understanding." A wise man thoroughly enjoys being wise and making wise decisions. But a fool will do any wicked thing. He doesn't care. He enjoys it. Proverbs 13:19 says, "Desire realized is sweet to the soul, but it's an abomination of fools to turn away from evil." He hates the thought of giving up his wickedness. He enjoys it too much. Remember, he wants pleasure, and he wants a bunch of it. And then in Proverbs 26:11, "Like a dog that returns to its vomit is a fool who repeats his folly." These fools will go out there and make a bad decision. They'll do something wicked and get punished for it. And guess what they do? They go right back and do it again. Why someone would do that, I can't understand. But these fools just don't have discernment. They go headlong. That's just the way they are. Don't be like that. What else do we know? His speech is powerless for good. Proverbs 26:7, "Like the legs which are useless to the lame, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools." And then chapter 26, verse 9, "Like a thorn that falls into the hand of a drunkard, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools." You realize what it's saying there? A drunk doesn't feel things. He can get hurt. He can get a really big thorn in his hand, and he won't even know it. And a fool, when he tries to say something wise, his lifestyle totally invalidates everything about what he's trying to say. So he can't do it. Proverbs 18:6, "A fool's lips bring strife, and his mouth calls for blows." That's the kind of thing that his mouth produces. And then, "A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims folly." He can only proclaim what's in his heart. It all comes from his heart. It's unfortunate, but that's his life. And do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of your words. Let him go. Be his own. He won't respond to rebuke. He won't allow you to correct him. Let him go on and experience the difficulty that is inevitably going to come. Now, he will make a rash vow that he does not intend to keep. Let's read this here. "Guard your steps as you go to the house of God, and draw near to listen rather than offer the sacrifice of fools." And what's the sacrifice of fools? Talk and talk and talk and talk. "For they do not know that they are doing evil. Do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few. For the dream comes through much effort, and the voice of a fool through many words." When you make a vow to God, do not be late in paying it, for he takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. It's better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay it. Do not let your speech cause you to sin, and do not say in the presence of a messenger of God that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry on account of your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For in many dreams and in many words there is emptiness. Rather, fear God. So what's happening here? The fool is quick to make a vow. "I'll do that. I'll do it." And he isn't going to keep it. He just wants to talk and hear himself talk. I encourage you, if you're going to make a vow to the Lord, consider it carefully. Take your time and be sure that this is something you're going to do before you make that promise to God. So in conclusion, for the 03684 fool, stay away from him. Solomon summed it up. Let a man meet a bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. So just leave him alone. Stay away. That's the 03684 fool. Wants to have fun. He makes decisions based on what he feels in his heart rather than sound logic. I encourage you, don't be that way. Now let's look at the next fool, the 0191 fool. This fool is morally corrupt and doesn't have the sense to know better. Let's see some things about him. The fool disregards moral, legal, and spiritual restraints. In Psalm 107, verse 17, fools, because of their rebellious ways and because of their iniquities, were afflicted. They're going to get bad results. They're going to have troubles that come along. And then in Jeremiah 4:22, for my people are foolish. They know me not. They are stupid children and have no understanding. They are shrewd to do evil, but to do good they don't know how. These people, all they want to do is get out there, no restraints. They want to do what they want to do, and there's no one's going to stop them. Now, let me give you an illustration of this. In 2 Samuel chapter 13, Amnon had a desire to have sexual relations with his half-sister, and he actually made himself sick because he wanted it. And his cousin advised him to go to the king and ask to have his sister come to his room and bring him lunch. And when she did, he raped her. And notice what the text says. When he said he was going to sleep with her, she said, no, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. As for me, where could I get rid of my reproach? And for you, you will be like one of the fools in Israel. He didn't listen. He went ahead, and he raped her. And then, of all things, look at the last. He hated her with more hatred than he loved her before, and he told her, get out of my room. Get out of here. But this man had no moral restraints, and he said, I'm going to get my pleasure no matter what. And he didn't realize it was going to cost him his life, because sometime later, Amnon's brother Absalom killed him for raping Absalom's sister. What do we know about this fool? What else do we know? Well, a fool's continual talking will generate ruin for him. Look at chapter 10, verse 10. He who winks the eye causes trouble, and a babbling fool will be ruined. Chapter 10, verse 8. The wise of heart will receive commands, but the babbling fool will be ruined. Okay, what does it mean to babble? Well, a paraphrase of the dictionary definition is to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk about things that don't matter. That's babbling. Chapter 10, verse 14 says, wise men store up knowledge, but with the mouth of the foolish, ruin is at hand. Notice, ruin is at hand in each case. What does it mean to come to ruin? According to Strong's Concordance, it means that to be thrust down, to be thrust away, to be thrown down, to be cast aside. In essence, it means to be discarded like a piece of garbage. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be there. A fool might appear to be wise if he would ever stop talking. Notice the verse. Even a fool, when he keeps silent, is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he's considered prudent. All he has to do is stop talking. But he wants to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then when he opens his mouth, you can tell he's a fool by what he says and how much he talks. What else do we know about this fool? He'll argue with anyone, anytime. Proverbs 20, verse 3 says, keeping away from strife is an honor for a man, but any fool will quarrel. Proverbs 29:9 says, when a wise man has a controversy with a foolish man, the foolish man either rages or laughs, and there is no rest. Don't bother arguing with a fool. It won't end up pretty because he won't agree. He'll just keep arguing until you either agree with him or you walk away in disgust. Proverbs 17:4 says, the beginning of strife is like letting out water, so abandon the quarrel before it breaks out. You see a quarrel starting? Cut it off. Tell them, I don't care to argue. Walk away, whatever it takes. And then Proverbs 27:3, a stone is heavy and sand weighty, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than both of them. He'll provoke you, he'll argue, he'll go on and on and on, and you'll just get fed up of it. So if you see an argument coming and you realize this guy's a fool, step aside. Don't go there. That's the best thing to do. Now, a fool cannot or will not control his temper. Job chapter 5, Job's defending himself here, and he says, In chapter 5, verse 1, call now, is there anyone who will answer you, and to which of the holy ones will you turn? For anger slays the foolish man, and jealousy kills the simple. For I've seen the foolish taking root, and I cursed his abode immediately. His sons are far from safe, and they are oppressed in the gate, and there is no deliverer. His harvest the hungry devour, and take it to a place of thorns, and the schemer is eager for their wealth. Job is saying, I've seen this fool. He gets angry, and his anger ruins him, and his kids become just like him. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Proverbs 12:16 says, the fool's anger is known at once, but a prudent man conceals dishonor. When things go wrong, this guy's going to let you know that he's ticked off. He's angry, and he doesn't care who hears it. He's going to let you know right away. He can't control himself. So this is the 191 fool, morally corrupt. Now this is the fool. Don't be one of them. But I hope it'll help you recognize a fool when he talks to you. And you can pray for him. You can try to correct him, but it may not go well. So I encourage you, don't be one. Don't do some of these things that we said a fool does. We can do that. We need to recognize it. But be open to correction, and someone can tell you where you're falling short. This is the fool. Lesson 3, Part 1. I hope you'll join me when we look at Lesson 3, Part 2. I'll look for you then. Thank you.